Welcome back. The Trump administration, in a memo to Congress yesterday, said that the U.S. now is engaged in a formal, quote, armed conflict with terrorist drug cartels. Now, the New York Times explains it a different way. The New York Times claims that the president is, quote, cementing his claim to extraordinary wartime powers in an armed conflict as defined by international law. A country can lawfully kill enemy fighters even when they pose no threat, detain them indefinitely without trials, and prosecute them in military courts. The White House is, of course, defending the move, saying, quote, the president acted in line with the law of armed conflict to protect our country from those trying to bring deadly poison to our shores. And he is delivering on his promise to take on the cartels and eliminate these national security threats from murdering more Americans. Joining me now is the White House border czar, Tom Homan. Tom, great to have you. Thank you so much for being here. The story from the New York Times trying to characterize what President Trump is doing doesn't even mention the amount of drugs coming into the country and what these drug cartels are overseeing. Can you tell us a bit of that?
Well, look, Maria, even at the Republican National Convention before the election, during my speech, I said if President Trump won, he would designate these cartels as terrorist organizations, which is the right thing to do. They've killed more Americans than every terrorist organization combined with the poison United States. So he's treating them as terrorists like they should be, and he's playing the away game. He's not waiting for the drugs to get here to kill, you know, hundreds of thousands of Americans through their poisoning. He's playing the away game. He's going to stop them before they get here and save American lives. He's doing exactly what he promised the American people he was going to do. By taking these actions, he is saving countless lives every day in this country.
Yeah, it's just incredible what's going on. Can you give us a sense of the activity at the border with regard to these drug cartels? I went to the border 6 times over the last several years, and I know that these drug cartels take people over the border and then they keep in touch with them because they want them to be mules for them in America.
Exactly. Today, we have the most secure border in the history of this nation. The cartels are hurting. You know, they're going bankrupt, so now they got to take maritime. Coming across that land border is very hard now because the border's so locked down because of the actions of President Trump. So we knew when we locked the land border down, they're going to take maritime. They're going to take to the water, and that's exactly what they're doing. So we're attacking them at the water. But as far as the drugs coming across the land border, they're at historic lows right now because the border is the most secure it's ever has been. So we got to look at aviation, them coming through the air. We got to look at the maritime. Right now, most of our efforts are maritime, either through the Caribbean or through the Pacific, and we're stopping them dead in their tracks. Which again, the effects, the amount of fentanyl seizures have dropped dramatically across the southern border, and a number of fentanyl overdose deaths has also dropped dramatically because of the actions of President Trump. He's doing exactly what he should be doing as the commander-in-chief, saving American lives.
What about the Border Patrol agents, Tom? I mean, look, we've got breaking news. Apple is now removing several apps from the Apple App Store. These apps were used to track ICE agents. So that was, people were tracking ICE agents and then showing up to bully them. The DOJ pressed Apple to remove these over officer safety. And of course, as you know, just yesterday, at least 3 people were arrested after anti-ICE protesters swarmed an ICE facility in Portland. ICE is also cracking down in Chicago, arresting at least 37 illegal migrants in one apartment complex on Tuesday alone. Agents made more than 900 arrests in the Chicago area since September as part of Operation Midway Blitz. And the president told military leaders at Quantico this week that Chicago and other major cities could become training grounds for the war from within, Tom. But I want to know about the safety of our agents right now.
Well, look, the Apple is, you know, thank God they finally took some action. It's too little, too late. Look, I think the reason they took it down is because Pam Bondi, you know, we got a strong attorney general says she's going to start investigating these applications and whoever's funding these applications and prosecute them because it is a form of impediment. It is only a matter of time before officers walk into a building and they're going to be, you know, the bad guy's going to be waiting for them because these apps are real time. They'll say, okay, ICE is operating right now at 14th Street and Broadway. Now, if you're a criminal alien and you know ICE is down the block from you, you can pretty much ascertain that they're coming for you. They're going to knock on your door. And there's going to be an ambush. And someone's going to get killed, most likely an agent. So look, threats against agents are up over 1,000% right now because of the hateful rhetoric from the left and members of Congress, mayors and governors of blue states that want to compare ICE to terrorists and Nazis and so forth. These apps that are available are dangerous. They use these same type of apps in smuggling. Mary, you've been down the border a lot of times. On the border, they're using apps to get U.S. citizens, college kids and high school kids to transport illegally in the South. This is a new form of our law enforcement tactics, is looking at social media and how they use social media to continue their criminal enterprises. But Pam Bondi sent a warning out. These people will be prosecuted, and all of a sudden Apple took it down. There'll be more coming, but they need to understand the entire Department of Justice is looking at people who impede law enforcement officers, whether it's in the street, protesters turning criminals, or whether it's these social media applications that they keep coming up.
No, it's an important warning. The AG joined me earlier this week and said just that. Watch.
Here's what we're doing in Chicago first. We are you've got a governor who doesn't want to help us. You've got mayors who don't want to help us. You've got woke DAs who don't want to help us. So if they're not going to help the people of their cities, we're going to help them. We're sending in FBI, of course, DEA, U.S. Marshals, ATF to back up our ICE men and women who are there following the law. We're doing that in Chicago and, yes, in Portland. Troops are going to come into Portland.
Well, thank God, because these guys need the backup. But what about this shutdown, Tom? I mean, it is day 3 of the federal government shutdown. Speaker Mike Johnson said that the Democrats are holding out because of health care for illegal migrants. Watch this.
The Democrats' counterproposal CR, the dirty CR we call it, as opposed to the clean CR, would result in nearly $200 billion being spent on illegal aliens and other non-citizens. Number 2, a provision that prohibits Medicaid from paying more for emergency care provided to illegal aliens than it does for American patients who are disabled or elderly or children. We eliminated that in their counterproposal that they have filed that you can read yourself. They want to repeal that. That would cost taxpayers $28 billion. Here's another one, number 3. They've counterproposed a provision that ends the Obamacare funding for non-citizens. The cost of that repeal would be $91 billion to all of you. Taxpayers, hardworking American citizens would be funding that.
What about that, Tom? And do you think that this government shutdown is going to slow down your operations in any way?
No, 2 things. First of all, no. The men and women of the Border Patrol, the men and women of ICE are out there every day, 24/7. We're not going to slow down. We're going to continue to run this national deportation operation. We're going to continue to secure that border. President Trump has made a promise to the American people. The men and women of Border Patrol and ICE will keep that promise. So God bless those patriots. I wore that unit. I started in Border Patrol. I ended my career with ICE. They're going to stand and do their job every day, despite this, this so-called shutdown. Second of all, Speaker Johnson exactly right. Free health care, all these benefits that the last administration threw, across the entire world brought over 10.5 million people to our southern border. When you make promises of you will be released, you'll be put in a hotel room with $500 a night, you can't be deported, there's a moratorium on deportation, and we're going to provide free health care, and people are shocked why we had over 10 million people come to our border. No, this is an enticement. It drives illegal migration. When you drive illegal migration, overwhelm the Border Patrol, like you've seen many times. When you overwhelm the Border Patrol, that's when the fentanyl comes across. That's when no inspected terrorists can sneak in. That's when the sex trafficking women and children go sky high. As simple as it sounds, free medical care, all these free service to illegal aliens drives illegal migration. We have the most secure border in the nation right now. We got to maintain that border, and what that means is we got to keep applying consequences. You're not going to come to this country, be released, and get free anything. You're going to be deported. You're going to be detained. The catch and release is over with in the last 6 months. How many illegal aliens have been released at that border? 0, and that's where it's going to stay.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to the border at one point, I went to some people's private ranches, their private homes, and one woman, she was crying. She said to me, Maria, I can't even throw out the garbage without going outside with my pistol, because she was so afraid that people were coming onto her property.
No, God bless President Trump. Thank God he's back in office, because he gave us the most secure border in the history of the nation today, even better than Trump 45. And when you have that most secure border, these people living on the southern border live safer, they live more free. Again, overdose deaths down, drug smuggling down, sex trafficking, women and children down, no suspected terrorists crossing the border non-existent. So President Trump's secure border is making this country safe again. It's giving us stronger national security. So I give it all to President Trump. His out-of-the-box thinking with the executive orders, they're a game changer. He's a game-changing president. Again, your viewers need to know, we have the most secure border ever in the history of this nation today, because of our president.
Yeah, it's amazing that, you know, the Democrats are not getting on board with it, and they're still fighting over the president's agenda. Why do you think that is, Tom? I mean, everything you've laid out, you know, eliminating the drug cartels, getting these drugs out of the country, keeping us safe, securing the border, you would think that most people would be on board with that, right?
Because we're spoiling their long-term plans. Long-term plans was release millions of illegal aliens in the country. In the next census, will be counted in the next census, and since they're most in sanctuary cities, is going to end up in what? More seats in the House for Democrats. And so we're ruining their plans. We're out looking for these people into the country legally that were released into the country in violation of federal law. We're looking for them. We're deporting them. They saw political advantage by letting these people in. We're taking that away.
That's too bad. So it's all about keeping their grip on power. Tom, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you so much. White House Borders are Tom Homan. Thank you, sir. First, there's this. Former FBI Director Jim Comey is due in court this morning after he was indicted on 2 federal counts of lying to Congress and obstructing justice. This comes after another fiery hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday, where Attorney General Pam Bondi accused the Biden administration of weaponizing government during Operation Arctic Frost, a 2022 FBI probe into dozens of Republicans and Republican entities, all surrounding the results of the 2020 election. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley also revealed more whistleblowers coming forth about the Biden FBI and its weaponization against then-Trump economic advisor Peter Navarro. Watch.
Whistleblowers have provided me additional records related to the Biden FBI political conduct against Peter Navarro. The first document is a request for physical surveillance on Navarro the day the FBI arrested him. The second document is a timeline of that surveillance. When Navarro, the FBI didn't arrest him at his house, which was literally right next to the FBI headquarters. Instead, they surveilled him and his fiancée all morning, starting at his home, following them to the airport, and then arrested him in public at the Reagan airport. The way Navarro was treated is unnecessary. General Bondi, I would like you to provide me all records relating to this matter.
Just extraordinary stuff here. Joining me now, the man himself, White House Senior Counselor for Trade and Manufacturing, Peter Navarro. Peter, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so grateful that you landed on your Chanels and are able to talk about this now. Peter, what was your reaction to what you heard from Grassley yesterday? You wrote a whole op-ed about this, and the operation to surveil you and follow you was much bigger than you initially expected and you thought initially, right?
Yeah, Bria, it was quite a morning. 6 armed FBI agents come at me in a gangway. I wind up in handcuffs, leg irons, wondering why Comey didn't get the same treatment when he was indicted, but that's another story. But these documents that Chuck Grassley released yesterday show this much bigger operation. You had nearly a dozen FBI agents doing their like Clouseau stuff. Navarro leaves his residence at 7:02 or whatever. And what's extraordinary about this is really the bigger picture here. Senator Chuck Grassley, almost single-handedly, is getting more and more documents that reveal this vast conspiracy. And I don't use that word very often, but it is. It's an 8-year-long conspiracy conducted at the top levels of leadership at the Washington field office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where Comey and then Wray were part of this, but you had Clapper, Brennan, Page, Strzok, a whole cast of characters involved in this. And the reason why my case is important, Maria, besides its constitutional issues, it's still on appeal, is that the agent, Walter Giardina, who's the one who put me in handcuffs, seems to be at the center of all of these operations that were designed either to overthrow the Trump government once the president was in or to stop him from winning elections. Walter Giardina, he was the guy who basically greenlit the Steele dossier as legitimate when we all know it was fake, as Comey and Giardina and all those others knew. That begat Crossfire Hurricane, the Mueller report, Crimson River, and then we've got the Arctic Frost one, which was a big topic of conversation yesterday, and that was just a license to surveil and subpoena and get records and go into people's emails and phone records. And Republican senators were targeted by that. So here's the bottom line. If we don't hold them accountable, Maria, they will do it again. And they may start doing it again as early as 2026 if Democrats get back control of the House and subpoena power. That's what's at risk. And it was chilling to me sitting in the hearing yesterday morning and looking at the right side of the table there of senators who were all on the far left. And you had Dick Durbin having the chutzpah to say that it was us weaponizing the federal government. They put me in prison. They put Bannon in prison. They tried to put Donald Trump in prison for 700 years. They bankrupted Rudy Giuliani. They took away the bar cards of Jeff Clark and John Eastman. These people, they have no shame with their talking points. And then you go around the room. It's like I sat really close to Schiff. The slime was getting on my suit from that guy. That guy is the guy that belongs in prison for lying to Congress. So the big thing here, Maria, is accountability. It's time for investigations, subpoenas. Chuck Grassley's going to take us to that promised land. And Pam Bondi finally yesterday got some people appointed, confirmed by the Senate. There was 100 people that got confirmed yesterday, and one fell through. A lot of them were justice people. She's been shorthanded. But now's the time, Maria. We've got to accelerate this accountability, do the investigations, give people fair trials like I never got, memo to the courts. And hold them accountable. They'll do it again. That's the problem here.
Well, I mean, it's just extraordinary the levels that they stoop to shut down any dissent and really to shut down President Trump and his team, putting you in jail and surveilling all these people. I'm really stumped as to why Arctic Frost targeted the senators that they did when they were investigating Jack Smith, investigating January 6th. I mean, Lindsey Graham, Marsha Blackburn.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I almost can understand Ron Johnson. I mean, it's absolutely wrong. It's unconstitutional and it's criminal what they did to all of them, including Ron Johnson. But Ron Johnson was a needle in their side. He was investigating them. What was Marsha Blackburn doing? Right? Was this all because they were allies to Trump? And then look at the surveillance timeline that they had on you. Almost a dozen agents involved. I mean, you initially thought it was just a swarm of 5 agents ambushing you and your fiance at the airport. And you made a great point. You lived right next door to the FBI. They could have just knocked on your door, but they wanted to make the stage a whole theatric thing and a full-blown public arrest when you were at the airport.
The most stunning reveal in those documents, Maria, was there was a checkbox on the form that the whistleblowers released. And it said, is the subject armed or dangerous? And the check was no. So there's absolutely no reason to take me down in the way they did. But those documents were hid in discovery in my actual court case, which is another example of how you simply can't get a fair trial. And with respect to why they're surveilling, I mean, you have to understand the culture of the FBI going back to Hoover. It's always to get dirt on congressmen so that they can bend the congressman to their will. I think that's what's going on. But this is all ultimately about getting Trump. I would be remiss here not to point out that people can read about all this in my book, I Went to Prison So You Won't Have to. I only mention it here because I Went to Prison So You Won't Have to is supposed to be a wake-up call for the American people. If they can do it to me or Bannon or Trump, they can do it to everyone watching this program now. And what I saw yesterday is they will do it. I'm telling you, these people, from Mondami to Schiff and everybody in between, they will use political power to have their way with you, and that way is not the American way, and that's the problem here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible, Peter. I'd like to see whether or not we actually do see more charges on Jim Comey and others who he worked with, and those charges around conspiracy. Because everyone I've spoken with lines up this timeline of a 10-year conspiracy. And, you know, it also crescendos around the Mar-a-Lago raid. Who was behind the Mar-a-Lago raid? What were they looking for? Why would they raid a former president's home? And so, you know, it certainly feels like there could be, you know, reason for a conspiracy charge, but we'll wait on that. We don't know where this is going
What's
next.
interesting about that, Maria, is that if you just simply look at like the legal theory and framework that Jack Smith brought, it's okay. They just use what they used against us, and how can they complain? So there's no question there was a conspiracy. I don't use that word lightly. There's too many conspiracy theories. No, because you look at the documents we're getting. It starts in 2016 with that Steele dossier, runs through Walter Giardina and Comey and Ray, and Ray, by the way, that guy needs to be held accountable as well, because all that stuff happened on his watch. And I was in prison with a lot of guys on RICO charges who got charged because they should have known. The feds will know what I'm talking about there. Let's get to the bottom of this. Maria, you've done a great job, just a beautiful job keeping this in the public's eye. And when this all started, they laughed at us. But now we know from all these documents, it's just too true.
Very serious
and it can't
stuff.
happen here in America, Maria.
And that's why we've kept on it. It's very serious. We're going to stick to our principles here. But let me move on and ask you about trade, since you're with us this morning, Peter, because President Trump welcomed Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney yesterday to the White House. They talked about trade, tariffs, and foreign policy. Watch this.
We want Canada to do great, but you know, there's a point at which we also want the same business. We're competing for the same business. That's the problem.
There are areas where we compete, and it's in those areas where we have to come to an agreement that works. But there are more areas where we are stronger together, and that's what we're focused on, and we're going to get the right deal.
So Jamieson Greer told me last week that they're going to look at these bilaterally. You're going to look at Canada and the U.S. trade. You're going to look at Mexico and U.S. trade, not USMCA, which was a three-country deal. Can you tell us anything about that, Peter, and your reaction to the meeting yesterday?
Sure. We are just broadly in the most beautiful place for the American people we've been, I think, ever with respect to trade. We're engaged. President Trump is engineering a fundamental restructuring of the international trade environment so that we are no longer penalized by the rules of the World Trade Organization, which fundamentally skew against us. That's the big picture. What Jamieson Greer, Howard Lednick, Scott Bessent, myself behind the scenes are doing is using a template with every specific country that deals, we look at, you know, what's the tariffs that we're getting screwed with? In Canada, it's like things like lumber and dairy. What's the non-tariff barriers that countries erect so that we can't sell into their markets? What's the currency situation look like? And then there's like national security issues. How can they help us shore up our supply chains and the things we need to survive? So that's how we're approaching it, bilaterally. That's where we're strongest from a negotiating point of view, and this is delivering. I mean, you look at the trade deals we have, it's just, you know, Europe, from
Yeah.
Europe to the Philippines, Indonesia, Japan,
Yeah.
Vietnam. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
so
and
trust in Trump on trade.
We're waiting for the
and we're gonna be
president's
good.
meeting with Xi Jinping, expected at the end of the month, on the sidelines to discuss more on the China potential deal. Peter, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much. The hot topic of the hour, and that is a bombshell, a revelation about the Biden-era FBI surveillance. Former special counsel Jack Smith was allegedly tracking the private communications and phone calls of 9 Republican senators as part of his probe into January 6th. A declassified document released by Senator Chuck Grassley shows Smith and his so-called Arctic Frost investigation team tracking Senators Lindsey Graham, Marsha Blackburn, Ron Johnson, Josh Hawley, Cynthia Lummis, Bill Hagerty, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, and Mike Kelly, among others. FBI Director Kash Patel recently finding this September 2023 document called Cast Assistance, which refers to the agency's Cellular Analysis Survey team. I'll be speaking with Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson at the top of the 8 a.m. hour, and I'll ask him all about this case. Did he know he was being surveilled? What did he learn from a briefing by the Deputy FBI Director, Dan Bongino? Plus, at 9 a.m. Eastern this morning, Attorney General Pam Bondi will testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee on political violence and the James Comey indictment, possibly this new Jack Smith revelation. As you know, Jim Comey will be arraigned this week. Caroline Downey, your reaction.
Yeah, Maria, as for the Jack Smith story, this seems to me to be more evidence of the weaponization of federal power against political opponents, which we know very well lawfare was the precedent set by the Obama and Biden DOJs. They targeted these senators with surveillance. So I think this should put to bed now that Democrats have this reverence for our institutions, for our Constitution, for our norms, and for all of the rhetoric that, again, is very inflammatory and is definitely contributing to some of the political violence we've seen around the country, that Trump is a fascist and a dictator. I can't think of anything more authoritarian than what we have seen with this revelation and with Jack Smith and spying on senators in the January 6th probe.
That's absolutely right. And the hypocrisy of it all is the fact that throughout the whole campaign, Mike, the Democrats kept saying that it was Trump that was a threat to democracy. All the while, they're surveilling elected sitting senators.
Maria, just like the 2016 campaign when they were spying on the Trump campaign, all right? And it's, you know, of course, they brought Jack Smith in not in spite of the fact that he's one of the only federal prosecutors ever to get reversed 9-0 by the Supreme Court. It's because he's a political hatchet man. Okay, he is there to go out and get his man. He will run roughshod over any rule, any law, any norm. And that was the whole point of this entire January 6th committee. No different than the Russia investigation. And just think about the headlines we've seen since Jim Comey has been indicted for clearly lying. You can see the crime on film. No, I didn't leak anything to the media. Okay, here's the exact documents where he's leaking to the media. No talk of this and his clear guilt about lying to the Senate. Only that it's unbelievable that Trump's going after his enemies. I think the FBI and the House Republicans need to start peeling back the layers of what happened in this entire January 6th probe and exposing it for the sham that it was and the political hit job and all the rules they broke, all the laws they broke, and all the other shenanigans they got up to, so we can just put this to bed that somehow the Trump Justice Department is breaking these norms.
Right, and let's not forget that this was all part of the conspiracy over a 10-year period, which started with Russia collusion, but went on with impeachments and January 6th and the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Former FBI Director Jim Comey is going to be arraigned tomorrow morning instead of Thursday on his 2 federal counts of lying to Congress due to large crowds expected around the Virginia courthouse today. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer pulling Comey's subpoena to testify on the Epstein investigation. Cheryl.
Well, what's the point of having James Comer, to have Comey come in front of the committee if you're Congressman Comer or Chairman Comer, because you know you're going to get nothing out of him. James Comey repeatedly keeps saying he knew nothing about the Epstein investigation, so maybe save the taxpayers some time. Speaking of fiscal responsibility, you know, that Jack Smith investigation, Maria, cost $50 million. And look at what we are now finding out about it. The good news in all of this, with the this whole thing, it stops here. And both Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have said we're going to restore the FBI, we're going to restore integrity, and they have said, this is Patel, under our watch, we will never again let the FBI turn against the American people. But as far as Comey today or this week, I think that it's a moot point. He's going to say, I know nothing, moving on, pleading the fifth.
Well, I'd like to know why the Mar-a-Lago raid happened. I'd like to know why these senators, I mean, Lindsey Graham, why was Lindsey Graham surveilled? Okay, Ron Johnson, I mean, I could almost understand they were trying to get Ron Johnson because he was investigating them. But Lindsey Graham, Marsha Blackburn, why surveil these senators? I mean, we are going to dig into this all morning long. We're just getting started this morning.
The shutdown now in day 23 after Democrats blocked the 12th Republican attempt to open our government up. And another vote just failed on paying essential workers. You would think that they could agree on something, maybe that part of it. Well, it turns out, nope, can't do it. And one key Democrat just admitted why. Listen to this.
Shutdowns are terrible. And of course, there will be, families that are going to suffer. We take that responsibility very seriously. But it is one of the few leveraged times we have. It is an inflection point in this budget process where we have tried to get the Republicans to meet with us and prioritize the American people.
So it's bad to keep the government shut down, Larry. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad. But it's the one time that we have some leverage, so we're going to use it. I mean, really?
The president's playing his cards pretty well. He won't meet with them unless they pass a resolution. It's straightforward enough. So let's not make this any harder than it needs to be. You want to play, you want to talk, he'll talk. Meanwhile, you got to clear out this local judge from California so my pal Russ Vought can go into action, pull the trigger, and make sure that non-essentials are permanently non-essential. And that all the pork that Joe Biden spent to get reelected and otherwise, his big government socialism, is, pardon the phrase, terminated. Impounded, that's the word I use because it inflames all people on the left. Impound that. Executive authority is there. Let's go for it. Pull the trigger. I'm ready to pull the trigger. Democrats want this thing to go on. Pull the trigger. John Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, ever had him on? He's a wonderful man. He's a brilliant guy. He was talking about, he said, Russ Vought's been ready for this since puberty. Russ got all his plans ready. It's fantastic stuff. I know, Russ, you can see him beavering away. Guess go for it.
So Republicans win these shutdowns politically every single time because there's a lot of conservative Republicans like me that are happy to see the government shut down. You spend too much money, you waste it. It's all utter nonsense. Look, I don't want military members not to get their paychecks, and there's some other things, but by and large, I'm not bothered by a shutdown. And then when you have Russ Vought here, kind of pushing things over the line that are part of the entire campaign pledge, this is a huge win, but the Democrats have nothing. They have no impotence to force the Republicans to make any changes because they have a losing argument. And it's like with Mandami, these are losing strategies in the short, medium, and long term. So where do we go from here?
Well, can I just say, though, I get worried that they do have a little leverage with some weaker need Republicans who get skittish about constituents back home complaining that they're not getting their Obamacare. So there's a few of them out there, and there's just enough that if you got them together and they got nervous, they might go along.
I don't agree with your political critique. Sympathetic to it, but I don't agree with it. The key, look, they're going to negotiate on health care and Obamacare, whether I like it or not. And they're starting already, Republicans are conferencing to do this. From Louisiana, not John Kennedy, the other one, Bill
Cassidy.
Cassidy, right? Who's Dr. Cassidy, a smart guy. And you're going to have to make an accommodation. But the president is right. We're not going to talk until you reopen the government, okay? And that is the right principle. And he's doing very well on that. I had Ari Fleischer on last night looking, Trump is slightly underwater, but nothing compared to where he was when this last shutdown during his first term. I think he was -6, so he's slightly underwater. He was -12 in the first term when they had the shutdown, which shows you the Republicans are doing better. It's not blame-free. Look, there's no way to run a government. Come on. I mean, it's just pure
What are they afraid
silliness.
of? Because Thune said this, and I love this quote. We've offered them a lot of things they were asking for, a normal appropriations process, an opportunity to get a vote on some of the things that they want to see voted on with respect to the expiring Obamacare enhanced subsidies. But that can't happen until we open up the government. Why won't you vote on it? Why won't you see if you can do it that way? Isn't that the better way to do it, to prove to people that that really is what Americans want, that their representatives are voting for?
Democrats are the left-wing party. They are the left-wing, big government socialist party. You know, you look at like this gal who said, you know, put her foot in her mouth. She's from Massachusetts. Really? The leadership, right, in the Senate and the House are from, wait for it, Brooklyn, New York. Where's the Republican leadership from? They're from the Sun Belt and the South and Texas and Louisiana
Midwest.
and the Midwest. Thank you. It's just they're just stuck. They've just AOC and Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's a joy to watch. I don't really think Chuck Schumer likes this. I think Chuck Schumer would be more than happy to go to some of his members and say, behind my back, please vote for the CR. But he can't get away with it anymore. The whole party is skewed. It's like a pinball machine on permanent tilt towards socialism. It's just unbelievable to me.
And Chuck Schumer's no pinball wizard. We know that.
He's lost a couple pounds, though. I'm kind of impressed.
Oh, okay.
He can get. I noticed he buttoned his jacket the other day. But the point is, we're going on here, and the public will at some point revolt against this. I mean, this thing goes into November. Pay dates are missed. The military and combat's not getting paid. Sean Duffy's worried about the air traffic controllers. I mean, these are serious concerns.
Well, it's going on Chuck Schumer's tab if that happens. So we got to leave it there.
First, the hot topic of the hour. Democrats sweep major elections across the country last night, including in New York City's mayoral race and the governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey. Fox Business's Darren Botelho is live this morning in Washington with what comes next. Darren.
Hey, good morning, Maria. So I think we can say right now the polling turned out to be pretty accurate for those high-profile elections all down the East Coast. Democrats winning from New York down to Virginia, starting with Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani besting Andrew Cuomo, running on his platform of tax the rich and free public transit. Over the river to New Jersey now, Democrat Mikey Sherrill, a former Navy helicopter pilot, securing her win over Republican Jack Ciattarelli. Then finally, going down to Virginia, Abigail Spanberger reclaiming the governor's mansion for Democrats over Winsome Earl Sears. Mamdani, of course, as you know, the most controversial of the races, with the 34-year-old ending now, for now, the Cuomo political dynasty, defeating former New York governor. So his 20-minute victory speech last night directly attacking the old political establishment, further pushing his far-left agenda and all but declaring war on President Trump.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
And Mamdani, who's been facing questions over his anti-police stances and accusations of anti-Semitism, won the race pretty decisively, with that race being called, Maria, only 40 minutes after the polls closed at 9 p.m. Maria?
Yeah, it was fast, Darren. Thanks very much. Darren Botelho joining us this morning. Your reaction. Emily, Adam, what does that mean?
Well, turn the volume up. That was the strangest thing I think I've ever heard, because it makes no sense. I don't know what he was referring to. I tell you what does make sense. Here in New York, 1% of the population pays 48% of the income tax. Capital goes where it's treated best. If he is going to pay for all these handouts by taxing the wealthy, people are going to leave. And it wouldn't take a lot to completely upset the balance of payments here in New York City, because, again, 1%. You antagonize a quarter of that 1%, and it all implodes.
You know, before the election, we were talking about really how much power the mayor of New York really has to implement these things. Jeffries this morning on Wall Street out with a report telling their clients a couple of the things that he actually could do. Mamdani's proposals within mayoral authority include a broad latitude to advance policies affecting property owners and renewable energy and immigration, intensifying enforcement of housing codes, accelerating city fleet electrification, enforcing sanctuary protections, relies on the mayor's ability to issue executive orders. Emily.
Well, Mamdani's policies ultimately will fail if he's able to implement them. That already might be a failure there. But we know socialist policies fail no matter if he's able to implement them or not. And I want to point out that today, November 5th, feels dramatically different from last November 5th when President Trump won the popular vote, won 7 swing states. Now we have an anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-police candidate who just was elected to run the financial capital of the world, to run the largest police force in the country, the NYPD, of course. Mamdani is going to be responsible for an $150 billion budget, 300,000 employees, and over 30,000 police officers. So I had a pit in my stomach last night when I heard Times Square erupt in cheers and cars honking, and I wish the best for New York.
Yeah, and you know, there are things that he has proposed that are actually outside of his authority.
Yes.
One of those things is freezing rent. He says he's going to freeze the rent for stabilized tenants. That depends on an independent rent guidelines board,
Correct.
where the mayor's influence is indirect. So we don't know if he's actually going to be able to do that. Eliminating bus fares citywide requires the MTA to actually make that ruling and state approval. Now, Kathy Hochul may go with him.
Right.
That's fine, but he can't do that unilaterally. Raising corporate or millionaire taxes,
Right.
revising property tax structures, and implementing universal child care all require Albany's approval. Again, Kathy Hochul backed him, so she may very well back all of this, but he cannot do that unilaterally.
No, he cannot do it unilaterally. And think about some of these proposals. Let's just talk about rent. Everyone here in New York complains, gosh, it's so expensive, whether you buy or whether you rent. Let's say you freeze rents. Well, if you freeze rents, then apartment owners are not able to effectively raise the rent to cover the cost of maintenance. What if the roof leaks? What if you have a problem with the plumbing? What if it needs, what if there are rats coming in and you need to have the foundation sealed? So what you're going to see is that there will be virtually no reinvestment, no CapEx, no capital expenditures to maintain the quality of property. So on the one hand, you say, oh, isn't it wonderful? My rent's not going up. Maybe even it's going down. Well, actually, no, it's not, because the quality of the building is going to erode over time.
Yeah.
So there are all these consequences that I don't think people have thought through. They hear the headline, oh, rent's going down. Great.
Who's paying for it?
Who's paying for it?
But again, freezing rent is outside of his mayor's
Correct.
authority. But again,
Right.
if Kathy Hochul backs it, he can do it. The other thing is implementing city-owned grocery stores. That would need the city council legislation for the program creation and budget support. That's not in his realm of getting this done. If he gets the support, okay. Raising New York City's wage floor to $30 an hour by 2030 is governed again by state law. So he's made a lot of promises, all of which are outside of his authority.
And can you imagine if minimum wage were raised to $30?
Wow.
I mean, minimum wage is supposed to provide some sort of floor for gig workers or temporary jobs. If you're going for a job that's got minimum wage attached to it, that's not intended to be a career. But he's trying to make it a career, $30. And guess what? Those jobs will disappear.
Well, we're going to talk all about this morning, what these new governor-elects as well as mayor-elect can actually get done. And we will also take a look at the state of these regions. We're just getting started this morning.
Iran's supreme leader says cooperation with America is not possible because of Trump's support for Israel. Jennifer Griffin joining us now. Jennifer, what is Trump's response to that?
Well, Stuart, as you mentioned, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, declared Monday that the cooperation with the U.S. isn't possible because Washington wants complete submission from Iran, backs Israel, which he referred to as the Zionist entity, and maintains military bases in the Middle East.
If they were to completely abandon the support for the Zionist regime, withdrew their military bases from here, and refrain from interfering in the region, then it would be possible to examine the issue. But that is not for now, nor for the near future.
Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian vowed to rebuild the country's nuclear facilities with greater strength. And the UN's nuclear chief says Iran isn't actively enriching uranium now, but said Tehran could build as many as 10 nuclear bombs if it chose to weaponize its uranium stockpile. When pressed in a CBS interview on whether he's certain Iran lacks nuclear capability, President Trump sidestepped.
Are you convinced they have no nuclear capability right now?
Do you want to know? They have no nuclear capability, no.
Israel's Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu raised eyebrows when he suggested during his speech at the UN General Assembly in September that Israel's highly enriched uranium had survived the strikes and needed to be accounted for, suggesting the job may not be finished.
We must remain absolutely clear-minded and vigilant. We must not allow Iran to rebuild its military nuclear capacities. Iran's stockpiles of enriched uranium, these stockpiles must be eliminated.
Comes as tensions deepen and the U.S. no longer has an aircraft carrier in the region, which critics say could invite adventurism in the Middle East. With the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier strike group ordered to the Caribbean by Secretary Hegseth, leaving a large vulnerability in the Middle East. New satellite images analyzed by the Center for Strategic and International Studies show possible renewed activity at Iran's nuclear sites despite the damage from the U.S. and Israeli strikes in June. Stuart?
Jennifer, thank you very much.
Welcome back. Well, the Senate taking a major step toward reopening the government overnight, voting 60-40 to break the filibuster and advance a spending measure. A final package vote set for the coming days, and if the bill clears the Senate, it will move to the House, where once it's passed, we'll move on to the president's desk for signage. And then the government can officially reopen probably by the end of this week. GOP leaders are now promising a December vote on extending enhanced Obamacare subsidies, which have been the Democrats' main sticking point in this record-long standoff, 41 days. Open enrollment is currently underway. Americans have until December 15th to enroll for health coverage beginning New Year's Day. Joining me now is Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator, Dr. Mehmet Oz. Dr. Oz, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
I always love spending time with you, Maria.
Well, this is a long-fought fight. I want to talk to you about everything you just did in the Oval Office the other day with the GLP-1 drugs and how President Trump and you and your agenda are making things more accessible for people at lower prices. But first, give us your reaction to the government likely reopening this week and what was achieved last night.
I'm over the moon, happy that we're going to get the government open, get all these federal workers back into their offices. For me, it means I've got actuaries and insurance experts that can help crunch the numbers and figure out what makes sense. It's also the right thing for the American people. You should not be negotiating important issues, in this case, the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid, under an extortionary situation where you're holding the government hostage. So opening the government up, allowing everyone to go back to work, getting air traffic control and all the other things you've been talking about, for me, a focus on health care is important. And you brought up this issue of a potential vote for on the ACA. This whole debate for Republicans is about fraud, waste, and abuse. During COVID, there were these enhanced, very generous subsidies given because it was an emergency to Americans who are in that category of 1 to 400% of the poverty level. They even gave it to folks who are making more than 4 times the poverty level because they wanted to be generous. It was COVID. It was a pandemic. The pandemic's over. We're not at war with the virus anymore. So Republicans are arguing all the shortcuts that were created over the last several years that led to fraud, waste, and abuse at massive numbers need to be reformed. And I'll give you just 2 numbers that listeners ought to be aware of. Half the 24 million people on Obamacare don't use the insurance. Now, if you buy insurance with your hard-earned dollars, you're going to probably use it for a prescription, a doctor's visit, no use. We believe half of those people, 6 million, literally don't know they have insurance, don't care that they have insurance. They're phantom enrollees. So that means the taxpayer is paying for insurance on, for example, Medicaid, and paying for you to have an Obamacare policy. Full freight. The insurance companies are happy with that. No one seems to mind, except, of course, the taxpayers who have to foot the bill twice. So these are the kinds of things you've got to clean up in order to get the ACA into a different place for next year. But meanwhile, open enrollment, as you said, is progressing. No hitches at all. Folks are signing up. Most people have very generous policies. And here's the basic number. The average person on Obamacare pays $50 a month for their insurance now. It used to be $37 this year, which means you're paying $13 more next year than this year. And that's the reason we shut the government down for 6 weeks, according to the Democrats.
I mean, there's also fraud, which was uncovered. I mean, you were able to uncover more than $1 billion in Medicaid money being spent on illegal immigrants.
Just found it out last week. The president was asking, the Democrats said it wasn't a problem. They wanted to repeal the one big beautiful bill. So we decided, trust but verify. So we audited the books of 6 states. We only have a few months of data from only a few of those states. We already have over $1 billion that we've identified of monies that were spent from, again, federal taxpayer dollars spent on illegal immigrants. And here's the catch. If you're in California and you want to give Medicaid to illegal immigrants in California, maybe that's your choice. We can debate that later. But you can't take money from taxpayers in Texas and Florida and pay for your illegal immigrants, because they're not doing that in Texas and Florida. And that's what's been tolerated for far too long. It undermines the system. And my job is to protect our most vulnerable. I am laser focused, and I'm a heart surgeon. So, my day job is taking care of people who are struggling with health issues. I want to make sure they have coverage. But if you dilute the coverage that we've dedicated to folks on Medicaid or to the ACA, to people who are not eligible for these programs, that's not only is it wrong, it's illegal, and we're going to stop it.
Unbelievable. I mean, what an incredible opportunity for you, Dr. Oz, after this incredibly stunning and proud career that you've had in medicine, to be able to move the needle for average people in America with this most favored nation policy on pricing, as well as allowing access to these GLP-1 drugs. I saw you in the Oval Office with President Trump last week making these announcements, this major deal that the president did with Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, to make GLP-1 weight loss drugs more affordable and expand Medicaid and Medicare coverage for the drugs. Tell us about this major announcement, your role in it, and the major benefits that you're expecting.
So the president early on said that he's not going to allow Americans to pay 3 times more on average for the same medications made in the same factories than the Europeans are paying. It's just not right. Just like NATO mandated that we have an equalization of responsibility fighting an external threat, we need the same thing internally. So the president literally calling me all the time. We were joking about it in the Oval Office. You were there once when this happened, but he would call and check, and he's a great leader. He wants to know what's happening, and he's been passionate about this for decades. It's just wrong that Americans are taken advantage of. So we went to all the pharma companies with the president's guidance, and Secretary Kennedy's passionate about this, but the people who really did the work, Maria, are Chris Klump, John Brooks, Inma Hernandez. These guys are barracudas. They went in there with top tier pharma executives and negotiated hard-nosed tactics to get the exact response we needed, which was an equalization of drug prices. So we now have in America most favored drug pricing for the single largest, most expensive category, which is these GLP-1 weight loss drugs. Maria, the Upper East Side of Manhattan is currently the top place where you get GLP drugs. That's not where the obesity epidemic is hitting us. It's hitting us in Mississippi and Appalachia and poorer parts of the country. So this program allows all Americans to get access to drugs at a fraction of what they currently cost. Right now, drugs, if you buy them at list, is about $1,200, $1,300 a month. The drugs now are going to be about $125 on average. There are different tiers. We have a program to allow it to go to Medicaid patients called Generous that Abe Sutton created, that is designed to allow governors now to dramatically drop the potential costs of these drugs for the Medicaid population where we really need help. That's where the obesity epidemic is literally killing us. And we have a moral hazard when the Upper East Side of Manhattan, an affluent area is enjoying as much of these drugs as they want and losing weight, but the poorer parts of the country are dying of diabetes and hypertension, heart attacks and strokes and kidney failure. So now we don't have that moral hazard anymore. This generous model is going to allow it for the governors. We have Medicare, the program I run, allowing Medicare beneficiaries to get the drug for $50 a month. You pay 50, we'll pay 200. Taxpayers happy, and here's why. Within 2 years of that ink drying in the Oval Office on Thursday, we predict we'll be saving money. There's so much benefit from reducing the expenses of taking care of dialysis patients and heart attack patients and dementia patients that we will be saving money for the taxpayer by buying these cutting-edge drugs. And these pharma companies are rapidly evolving this technology. We have pills coming out. I just learned, I'll break it to your audience, by March, we will have pills replacing the injections for these patients as well. That's at $150. It's even cheaper. So we are dramatically changing the face of obesity. But one big statement, one big plea. Maria, you were kind in your words to me earlier. My whole life has been built on educating folks, empowering people. Lose weight the right way. Diet, exercise, Obesity is not a shortage of GLP-1 drugs in your bloodstream. However, if you can't lose weight, these are an important crutch. They absolutely work, reducing about 20% of the obesity that we're seeing now in folks who are struggling. And we think there's going to be massive uptake of these drugs so that by the time a year from now, when we speak, and we'll speak many times between them, but by a year from now, Maria, we'll have lost 135 million pounds as a country. That's a lot of lives saved.
That's incredible. And I think the point that you're making is so critical, so I want to underline it. This is not just giving access to a pill that makes you skinny. You believe that these pills do more than just attacking a person's weight, because we've seen medical journal research that says that these pills are effective in helping to ward off against dementia, helping to ward off against heart disease, because it's really obesity that's the killer. That's going to lead to diabetes. That's going to lead to heart disease. And so you've got to address the obesity by getting thinner, and these drugs do just that. That's an important point, I think, that we need to underline. And also the fact that some people don't like the fact that you have to give yourself an injection, and you just revealed to us that we're going to have pills in the market by March. We spoke with the CEO of Eli Lilly here just a few weeks ago on his efforts to get the pills out in the market. Talk to us about the bigger, broader point about these drugs in terms of our overall health.
So I'm a big proponent of the Make America Healthy Again movement created by Secretary Kennedy. I don't think we'd be having some of these discussions without his bold leadership. The president has been passionate about this, and here's the story. MAHA fundamentally is about making it easier to be healthy in America. We have to automate the system, better food supplies. We're talking with Brooke Rollins at Ag. She's working hard at this. We have new dietary guidelines. All that's going to happen. But in the meantime, we have a bigger problem with obesity than we have ever had in our history. We're twice as fat as Europe. That's why we're spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as they are in Europe. And so if we drop the obesity incidence in this country, all the downstream problems that arise from the inflammation are also going to get better. And it starts with diabetes and hypertension, but it progresses to end organ failure that is really expensive to treat. And it's wrong that some Americans can treat this problem, can crutch on these cutting-edge medications, and some Americans don't have access to them. And I don't want to have a scenario, you don't want to have a scenario, where in America we have an unfair healthcare system. If you're an American, you deserve to have access to life-saving medications, whether it's cancer, autoimmune problems, or in this case, obesity epidemic that we know is stripping the guts out of the livelihood of Americans. We want to be fit. A fit nation is productive. We want Americans flourishing, getting back to work, not having to miss important events in their lives because obesity stripped away their vitality. So let's stop making this about a moral failing and focus on the fact that in some cases we have a biologic solution. And we also want innovation. And Maria, this is critical for the audience. The president said, I don't want you hurting the ability of top-tier American companies to produce better life-saving solutions. If we put price controls in place, we'll destroy the industry. If we negotiate with them, with top-tier negotiators, for folks who know what they're doing, and squeeze these companies to do the right thing because it's a business decision, then they'll come voluntarily. This is the fourth and fifth major U.S. companies. Novo and Lilly are great companies, but we also have Pfizer on board, AstraZeneca on board, and Serrano on board. This is for fertility drugs. So now we're getting cancer drugs. All the big problems that are hindering America are being addressed by reducing the cost. And this goes full circle back to the government shutdown. The Democratic solution to increasing healthcare costs is to spend more taxpayer dollars on it. We should, at the same time as spending more money to make sure everyone's covered, drop the cost of care, negotiate in a hard-nosed, tactical way with, in this case, pharma, but we're going to do with insurance companies across the board to sort of drive down the actual cost of care. The president's a negotiator. He's a deal maker. You know, that's how you get stuff done. You actually negotiate for what you want.
And do you have any thoughts on how these ACA subsidies should move forward after they expire this year? Because the Committee for a Responsible Budget says if you do a deal and fully extend those without any offsets, that would be the costliest way to end the shutdown ever, because a 2-year extension costs $60 billion. A full-year extension costs $350 billion. The full counter-proposal continuing resolution rolls back the Medicaid savings of $1.5 trillion. Republicans are never going to go for that. So do you have a thought on how you want to see this play out once these subsidies do expire this year?
You always ask the right questions, Maria. So I spent a good part of the weekend with the White House working on exactly the answer to that question. We have lots of great ideas, but I don't want to show our cards. As the president often says, why would I telegraph to you what we're going to do? We have to have an open government. I need my top people around to be able to navigate the right solutions. We will support the American people. We always have. We want to do it in the right, responsible way. If we don't, it'll implode. If we hadn't fixed Medicaid with the one big beautiful bill, it would have collapsed under the weight of its increasing expense. There was a 50% increase in Medicaid spending in the last 5 years since the COVID pandemic started. We're at peace. There's no virus. We've got to reset, right-size the program with things like the Rural Health Transformation Fund, where we're pouring $50 billion into rural American healthcare in order to fix a real problem. But we don't want to throw money at issues. We want to actually have tactical solutions that work, and it's happening.
All right. We will be watching all of that. Dr. Oz, you're doing a great job. We so appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
God bless you, Maria.
All right. Dr. Mehmet Oz joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The media. It is heavily critical of Republican leadership in the House, and they're not too happy with the GOP as a whole either. Outlets like the New York Times, NBC, Axios, they're specifically taking aim at Speaker Johnson, who just happens to be in New York, and he's sitting next to me in our New York studios. Sorry about the cold weather, Mr. Speaker.
Glad to be here. However, we got a lot of House Republicans in town for our annual Bright Lights Big City celebration, so great time to be here.
So how are you going to keep your party in line when you have a minuscule majority?
Well, this is what we do every day. We have one of the smallest margins in U.S. history. There's 220 House Republicans. And on any given day, 2 or 3 or 4 people may be upset or frustrated about something. They didn't get all their preferences or they have different ideas. The media, the way it works on Capitol Hill, as you know, is they zero in on a couple of voices and they try to amplify it to divide the Republican Party. Because if we stay unified, there is absolutely nothing that we can't achieve. And we've already demonstrated that this Congress. We've had one of the most productive Congresses in the history of the institution.
Do you need the president to get on the phone to some reluctant GOP members in the House and say, come on, come on?
He's been very helpful at a couple of junctures along the way where we've had big legislation, the one big beautiful bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, other things where you had 2 or 3 or 4 holdouts, which I can't afford. Now, remember, in previous years, speakers had 25, 30, 40-seat majorities. I have a razor-thin majority. I have to get every single Republican on most days, and so it takes a lot of work, but we're going to get there.
Separate issue. The Supreme Court says Texas can use newly redrawn congressional maps in the midterms next year. So, Mr. Speaker, that's a win for Republicans by the looks of it. How many extra seats does that mean for the GOP?
Well, I would say it's a win for common sense and the rule of law. What the court finally affirmed is what we've known all along. Texas had a legal right to redraw the lines and to do it in a fair way that reflects their population, and that's what the court has said. There's many other states in various stages of that right now. About 14 different states are redrawing lines and in various stages of litigation. So we don't know what the final number will be. I believe our party will net seats at the end of that. But here's the thing. I've got to win with whatever maps are produced, and we will. We have a great record to run on, great candidates. We're excited about the midterms.
Governor DeSantis was with me earlier today, and we're going to run the tape a little later on the show. And he says, yeah, they're moving forward in Florida with redistricting. Sure. That's what they want to do. So if you add Texas and Florida and the other states which will move in favor of Republican seats,
yes,
you're going to pick up an extra 10 or 20?
I don't know if it'll be that large because we've got blue states doing the same. But when it all sorts out, we'll net seats. Again, I liked the maps even before the current redistricting battles began. As we sit here right now, there are 13 House Democrats sitting in districts that Trump won. There's another 21 of them sitting in districts he came within 5 points of winning. Conversely, there's only 3 House Republicans seated today in a Kamala Harris district. So what that means is we have a lopsided map. It's a very favorable map for us, the best we had in about 30 years, which means we play offense. We're going to flip blue seats to red because we're going to run on this extraordinary record of what we've done.
Redistricting is basic, raw, nasty politics.
It is. And
that's what it is.
And some of us regret all that, but it is what it is. And at the end of the day, it's going to benefit the American people.
President Trump's going to Pennsylvania Tuesday, I believe, to talk about his economic agenda ahead of the midterms. Do the Republicans have a messaging problem with affordability?
No, it's just that we've had so many things to message. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. The big, beautiful bill was aptly named because there was so much in it, so much policy, and there were so many things to message all at once. So you had different Republicans out talking about different things, which they need to do in their districts, but it made it appear as though the message wasn't unified. We are laser focused on affordability, bringing down the cost of living. The president's agenda is going to be aggressive, and this Congress is going to deliver that. So as we go into the midterm cycle next year, you'll hear everything focused on that issue.
Time's running short. What are you going to do about Obamacare healthcare subsidies?
We've been working on this for months, and Republicans are the party that are going to bring it down. Remember who broke American health care? It's the Democrats. The Unaffordable Care Act is 15 years old now. When they passed it, they said it was going to bring premiums down. Did exactly the opposite.
Will you do any kind of compromise to make sure that people don't face a spike in premiums?
Well, every day in Congress is some sort of compromise. But I'll tell you, we put together the component pieces of what we know can bring down premiums, and you'll see some of this being rolled out in the next few days, probably by mid next week. Republicans are going to deliver, and it's only our party, Stuart, that is going to bring down premiums, increase access to care and quality of care. Democrats, all they do is break the systems and then subsidize the broken systems. We have different ideas, and it will benefit the American people.
Obamacare is broken, has been since day one.
Of course.
Do you have the ability to really reform it? I mean,
we have to
do this?
We have to reform it. I wish that we could rip it out from the roots and start over, but it's so deeply ingrained, it's sinister in that way. But it has broken the system, and what we have to do is go in and reform it. We have lots of ideas, expanding HSAs, the cost-sharing reduction models, reforming PBMs. I mean, we could go on and on. We will. We pull all that together in one plan. We draw consensus around it, and Republicans are on a mission to fix health care.
So you reform Obamacare if you can. Yes. What about the Minnesota welfare fraud problem, $1 billion? Does that imply to you that you've got to reform the welfare system as well?
Absolutely. And in the big, beautiful bill, by the way, we did that. We put work requirements in for SNAP benefits, which is long overdue. We reformed Medicaid, and we reduced fraud, waste, abuse in that program. The CBO, Congressional Budget Office, says that it will save $185 billion for taxpayers and bring down health care premiums. We have many more reforms like that. The big, beautiful bill was infused with reducing fraud, waste, and abuse provisions, and we have much more ahead of us, and that will be an aggressive part of the agenda in the next year as well.
Do you work 18 hours a day?
More. And I have to, because President Trump works 21 hours a day.
I see you on TV all the time, always surrounded by hostile media people.
Oh, yes.
And your fellow,
it's a really fun job,
having a go at you.
No, look, we accept this duty humbly. It's an important time in American history.
Are you enjoying it? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Speaker, but I've got to get to grips with the job you're doing.
I mean, I'm a wartime speaker in a real sense, and so it's not the most enjoyable job in the world, but I do love what we're doing. I love the team I work with. We have a unified Republican Party. If we didn't, Stuart, we would not have delivered on all the things that we have this year. There's much more ahead of us, and this team is excited about it. It is.
Just give us the tax cuts and the regulatory cuts.
That's right. Get ready. There's more coming.
Reform.
There's more coming.
Just give
Absolutely.
It to us.
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Speaker, it's a real pleasure. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks
I appreciate it, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hundreds of state workers at the Minnesota Department of Human Services publicly excoriated Governor Tim Walz for allowing a, quote, massive fraud scandal to unfold under his watch and retaliating against their whistleblowers. The X account, which represents over 480 staffers at that department, saying, quote, Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We will let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud. But no, we got the opposite response. Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. This, as a group of Minnesota state government employees wrote to former Vice President Harris and the DNC multiple times, warning them about Governor Walz and what they described as his incompetence, fraud scandals, and retaliation. Here's what they said. We tried our best to keep the public informed. As our tweets are public, maybe Kamala turned a blind eye to fraud like her running mate. Over the years, our messages have not changed. We need fraud to stop in Minnesota and good governance to be restored. Minnesota is currently at the center of a widening fraud scandal. Federal prosecutors continue to unravel this. One of the nation's largest COVID-era fraud cases. So what happened here, Chris, is that really going back to the COVID days, there's this agency, the Minnesota Medicaid Housing Stabilization Services Fund. There's also another one, Feeding Our Future. Basically, the allegations is that all of this money was being stolen by those in the Somali community in the Twin Cities, and it was going back to Somalia. They were funneling it, and then it was ending up in the hands of al-Shabaab, which is a designated terrorist organization.
Right, and so I did not have Minnesota's welfare funds going to terrorist organizations on my bingo card, and that's what is so frustrating about all this, because we knew Tim Walz was a disastrous VP candidate. He's a dork. He's very annoying. He's supposed to be this everyman, but doesn't know.
Not smart.
Not very bright. The president used a different word for that. But the Oppo, the research that should have been done during the campaign, should have brought this up. This is a huge bombshell that not only does he have all those negative characteristics, oh, by the way, his government was also funding terrorists and al-Shabaab in Somalia. That should have been devastating for the Harris-Walz campaign.
It could be, we could be talking about $1 billion potentially.
Shocking.
And the first time I saw this yesterday was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent actually posting about it. He says, we're going to do an investigation. I mean, this is millions and millions of dollars coming from taxpayers going to this terrorist
Well, even
allegedly.
Yeah, even the New York Times, which, as we know, is typically very friendly to Democrats, leading with an article, quote, "How Fraud Swamped Minnesota's Social Services System on Tim Walz's Watch." If you remember, as soon as the Harris campaign named him as a running mate, his family came out. Remember? The Walz family against Walz. There were 15 of them. They had sweatshirts made. They said, no, he's a bad guy. You don't want him as number 2 in this country. And here we are. It's all finally coming out.
That they were taking cash and putting it on flights, going to Somalia. And that this goes beyond Minnesota. It goes across the Somali communities in the U.S. and in Western Europe. So more on this to come, I'm sure.
President Trump isn't just talking about tax relief. He's talking about rewriting the whole tax code.
Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever. And we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars. And we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people. The money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous, that you're not going to have income tax to pay. Whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now, but you won't be paying income tax.
Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Dagan McDowell, along with my co-hosts, Taylor Riggs, Brian Benberg, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for this hour, Great Hill Capital Chairman Thomas Hayes. Great to see you. Not only is the White House promising Americans a lucrative tax refund season, it says, the president, that they can expect Americans tariff dividend checks as well. But no more federal income taxes? Feels like a pipe dream. The president insists that his tariff windfall is big enough to fund the government, cut the deficit, and still put money back in the pockets of voters. Critics will argue, it's not just critics, we don't need to put it in the frame of critics. I'll argue that the math doesn't add up. This is a classic President Trump, be big, be bold, force Washington to defend a status quo that most Americans cannot stand. And with inflation expected to ease in 2026, we could be entering phase 2 of an affordability push. So while Americans dread tax season, it may soon become the most wonderful time of the year. Brian Benberg, to you first on this. I'm holding a big announcement in my mouth.
You're not pregnant.
There is something to be said. No. There is something to be said, though. Half of the country doesn't pay any income taxes.
True.
So why have this vast monstrosity of forcing them to fill out paperwork and file, and then you get a refund? And there's something that he is piecing together here, and it's not quite coming out. But well, I sense something.
I sense things, too. Look, I want to just stop and celebrate the fact that in the White House you have a president saying, let's get rid of the income tax, because you would not have had that under the previous president. They wanted to double down. Actually, they wanted to make it worse by doing wealth taxes. So I like the idea of no income tax. I like better, and you've mentioned this before, because tariffs are sort of this, I like a consumption tax better than an income tax, because I'd rather tax consumption than work and investment. So the president is putting out, I think, a great idea in principle. I don't think it's going to happen. I agree it's not going to happen. It's not realistic. I don't think, and again, this is sort of my non-lawyer analysis of what's going to happen with the Supreme Court. I don't think a lot of his IEEPA tariffs are going to stand. I don't think that's a big problem for him because he's got other ways to do it. But I do like the one thing he's doing here that I think is super important, because they haven't done enough this year, is they're saying, wait until you start to get your refunds from the big, beautiful law, the big, beautiful bill, because it is going to be big. You're going to feel it. And it's going to change your whole tax picture for the coming year, which is why you got guys like Kevin Hassett and Scott Bessent saying 2026 is going to be a bonanza. So from the president's lips to God's ears, no income tax. I don't know if the Lord's going to answer that prayer just now, but it's a great idea.
Can I do the math here for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so federal receipts.
I'll hold up this handy chart
for the Department of Treasury.
Oh, I can see that perfectly.
It's a little small for me. But the federal receipts overall were almost $5 trillion in fiscal year 2024. Of that, the individual aspect of it was $2.43 trillion. So if we're talking about tariff revenue right now of roughly $300 billion for the year, no, the math doesn't add up. But Brian, I agree with you. The sentiment is there that the president wants to do as much as he can for working Americans. And what I love about this, and we talk about it, is that it is work incentivizing. Go to work, you can make money, you can keep more of it. And that is what people want to hear. You know, we talk about handouts, we talk about entitlements. Even Joe Biden said, you know, job is your dignity. And that is important to people. I don't think most people really want to sit on the couch and take these entitlements, but they're a little bit lost and they're a little bit stuck. So what the president wants to do is incentivize them not only to work, but create a growth engine in the economy where the opportunity to work is there. And that is what's happening here. Now, if they're right, the administration, and in 2026, you have a gangbuster year because people are getting their refunds from no tax on tips and the new policies that were implemented in the big, beautiful law, then that's going to contribute to the growth engine as well. Remember, I said this is a wheel. It's got a lot of different spokes, this economic policy overall. As these spokes come together and that wheel starts to move, I think you're going to really see something amazing. And the haters are going to have to turn around and admit that they were wrong on this.
3 quick points, and I want you to weigh in on this. I mentioned this last week. A lovely man in my building the other day came up to me and he said, can you tell me more about no tax on overtime? Because I'm working Thanksgiving and I'm doing double time and I'm working a little bit extra and putting an extra shift. How does that work in my paycheck? And so we kind of went down the math. And I kind of alluded to, like, you'll get a lot of money back when you start filing taxes. And he looked at me and goes, ooh, that sounds good, right? I could have that money. I could deserve that, or really it would be nice to have. The other part to this is this sort of folds into the Michael Dell announcement when we talk about income taxes. We joke that our alma maters call us and they ask for us to donate to the foundation. And my response is always, I can't because the government's already taken half my money. Sorry, I have no money left.
Actually, they do call them.
If the federal government were to lower my taxes, I would bet, the same way Michael Dell just bet, that they would give more money directly to people, to charities, to foundations, to whatnot. So I would have control over how my money is spent, and I would give it back to those in need much more than I do now, because the government is, I think, more wasteful in their resources and how they distribute money than I would be personally. But here's the other end of that, Brian. I just want to challenge you.
Okay.
Do you really want a consumption tax? If our economy is
the part I wasn't
60
into.
or 70% based on the consumer, that's how our GDP is. If that's what's
I'm
powering...
saying no income tax.
But if that's what's powering the economy, is a consumption tax, which is what the lower income...
Consumption doesn't power our economy. Production does.
Yep.
Okay.
And the income tax penalizes work.
Okay.
The consumption tax penalizes consumption or buying of things. You want to, if you have a consumption tax, you create incentives for work. And what President Trump did with the tariffs, it is I've said this over and over, it's a sliver of a value-added tax.
Yeah.
It is a sliver of a consumption tax. So he actually, there's great economic theory that undergirds what the president is doing. He won't say it.
Right.
Brian, knock it off.
Wait, but we already pay
What
sales
she
tax.
said, Taylor. What she said.
Guys, serious. We already pay sales tax. In New York, it's a little bit over 8%, right? So you see that when you make purchases, at least of clothing, for example, over a certain amount, or of food and beverages and all those other things we consume. So how much more can you add to that, where you would need to offset what we were talking about, the trillions of dollars that you think people can absorb? I guess he's looking to cut on the other end, so you would have more money, like Taylor's suggesting. But I don't know. There's got to be a balance.
You have a federal government where the bottom 50% of federal taxpayers only pay $63 billion in annual taxes. That is less than 2 months of tariffs. They're not paying anything. And we need to cut healthcare spending, but instead we just got checks for babies and Obamacare super subsidies. We're Denmark without the value-added tax. That is the definition of insanity.
I think this is all about direction, not destination. We know the math doesn't add up, but it's the idea of pro-growth policies. And furthermore, this is really just an advertisement to the Supreme Court. If you unwind these tariffs, I'm just going to pay it out as dividends, baby. If you keep it, I'm going to pay down debt. So we can pay down the debt one of two ways. We can have massive growth through handing out these dividend checks, in which case we're going to inflate it away. Or we can be responsible about it and keep the tariff income coming in, and we will use that money to pay down debt. Up to you, Mr. and Mrs. Supreme Court. That's the way it's going to be. But the name of the game here is people are afraid of inflation, they're afraid of yields, and it's recency bias. What we had with COVID inflation was a unique situation of ongoing checks and supply chain disruption, and people locked in their house with nothing else to do but order goods. That's not going to be the case this time, predominantly because of the most important policy, which is the energy policy. You keep energy low. The Saudis respect this administration. They have been towing the line and keeping production up. If oil stays down, they can get away with murder. They can hand out dividend checks till the cows come home. The supply chain is not going to be disrupted, and we are going to grow above trend, just like we did post-World War II. The last time we had debt to GDP at 120%, we basically grew our way and inflated a little bit, 3 to 5% inflation. By 1957, debt to GDP dropped to 63% from growth and letting the economy run hot. Like Larry Kudlow always says, let it rip. And that's exactly what this administration is going to do with the dream team of Hassett and Bessent.
That's your prediction.
I think that's the way it's going to go.
The
he's going to go as low. He's going to be like.
We shall discuss this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the getting away with murder, that was figurative.
Welcome back. The Trump administration hoping to give working Americans a boost in the new year with a new tax refund of up to $2,000 by early next year. The payout coming from recent tax changes and tariff revenues, with as much as $100 to $150 billion flowing back to taxpayers in the first quarter of 2026. The White House says it expects this to be the largest refund season on record. I am with the Treasury Secretary this morning, who is also the IRS commissioner, who is also the guy who's holding it all together. Secretary, what can you tell us? You see all the data. What can you tell us about the upcoming tax season and what we're going to see in terms of our returns?
Yeah, so Maria, let's go back. The one big beautiful bill was passed on July 4th, but for working Americans, it was retroactive to the beginning of the year. Most taxpayers did not change their withholding, so as a result, we're going to see very substantial 100 to 150 billion of refunds in the first quarter go directly to Americans' pockets. So the sooner they file, the sooner they'll get them. Our estimate is it could be 1,000, 2,000 per household, depending on the number of workers.
Wow, that is a big deal. So, Secretary, you've talked about this additional money from the tax code that we're getting. You talked about the impact of the big, beautiful bill. It sounds like you think we're going to get a real economic boost for the macro story in the first or second quarter. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I think it's going to. They start lifting off in the first quarter and the second quarter. And, you know, Maria, the other thing, when I started my career on Wall Street in the 80s, people used to focus on trade. Were we building more in the U.S. or were we importing more? We're seeing the trade deficit drop, too. So the trade deficit drop means more production in the U.S. So I think that's something that economists are going to have to start looking again, thanks to President Trump after 40 years.
Well, you're proposing a major shift now in how the government approaches financial stability by re-examining crisis-era rules, moving toward a more flexible regulatory framework. This could not be more important. I know President Trump thinks that deregulation is arguably even more important than tax cuts.
Yes. Well, they go together, and the tax cuts allow corporations, but more importantly, working families to keep more of what they get from the deregulation. And the deregulation allows us to have substantial growth without inflation. What caused the inflation under Biden was they did this gigantic spending, the series of gigantic spending bills, but then they constrained supply through over-regulation. So what we've done, I chair something called FSOC, the Financial Stability Oversight Council, and these 2008, 2009, 2010 financial rules were too tight. They have hamstrung the American financial system. It was time for a change. We are going to be safe, smart, and sound in terms of our deregulation, but we have to take the financial system out of the straitjacket. Yeah. This substantial increase in private credit, which is outside of the regulated banking system, that tells me that the regulated system is too constrained and has not been able to compete with those who aren't regulated. So we're leveling the playing field, and I believe that we can do that in a way that creates trillions of dollars in credit for this very strong economy we're going to see, and it will be non-inflationary.
Secretary, let me move on to China, because we are worried that they are not sending the rare earth magnets that we need in this country. You said to me a month ago that you thought we would have a signed document on a trade deal with China very soon. Where are we with this? And do you trust that, in fact, they are going to flow these rare earths even to companies that are tied to the U.S. military?
So, Maria, it's trust but verify. Thus far, the Chinese have done everything. We negotiated a deal in Kuala Lumpur with my counterpart, the vice premier. President Trump and President Xi had a very robust discussion in Busan, Korea. And Maria, the good news is President Trump respects President Xi, but more importantly, President Xi has great respect for President Trump. And that is new. That is not like the previous administration. Previous administration was all bark, no bite, which is very dangerous geopolitically, very dangerous economically, and the Chinese have lived up to every part of the negotiation thus far.
Well, the president's going to be meeting with Xi Jinping in April. What more do you want to see China agree to?
Well, what we would like to see is them to begin rebalancing. The world cannot have a China that has a $1 trillion trade surplus. That's just not possible. So they need to increase their domestic consumption. Many of our allies, early in the summer, when we put up the tariff wall, I told the Europeans, the Australians, the Canadians, the Brits, Koreans, and Japanese, I said, look, this flow of high-end goods from China, the global South, cannot take all of that. It's coming to your shores, and now they are being overwhelmed by this never-ending supply of Chinese goods. And I think it behooves the Chinese. We could do, as Ray Dalio would say, a big, beautiful rebalancing together. President Trump wants to bring back more manufacturing. The Chinese need to consume more. If we could do that together, it'd be a very good equilibrium.
Secretary, you're doing so much. In addition to all of this that you're doing in terms of growing the economy and ensuring that we've got stability here in America, you're also dealing with sanctions on Venezuela, sanctions on Russia. What's the most sort of crushing sanctions, and do you think sanctions actually work?
Sanctions applied fulsomely, robustly, do work, but I think what's happened over the years is we've gotten very lazy on sanctions. So with my Treasury Department, we go in, we have a clear objective. We believe if we do these sanctions, this will happen. We look at it 90 days later. Are we achieving our objective? Because the thing with sanctions, Maria, is you just create new markets. You sanction Russian oil, and then a ghost ships start appearing or disappearing. You're trying to cut off Iranian oil, same thing. So, a good sanctions regime, you always have goals, and you constantly reevaluate whether you're meeting the goals. For instance, on Venezuela, we had Venezuelan oil had been sanctioned for years, but now President Trump has taken the initiative. We are cutting off the narco boats, and for the first time, we have now directly boarded ships carrying Venezuelan oil,
right.
And the oil's sanctioned, and that's the authority under which we take it. And I think the Maduro regime is on the ropes.
Secretary, with all of this that you're dealing with, is it fair to say that you're going to put the IPO of Fannie Mae on the table for a little while? I mean, is this off the table right now?
It's not off the table. That we're working on it very deliberately. As I've told you when I've been on here before, Maria, we have several goals. The first goal and the guiding principle is that the spread between mortgages and U.S. government bonds in any IPO scenario has to remain the same or come down. Then we want to get the maximum amount of value, and we want to create the best shareholder base. So that's still moving forward.
So it's going to be done next year sometime?
Sometime.
All right, real quick before you go, this is my final question here. There is a story in the New York Times. Here's the title. Now it can be told Nancy Pelosi resisted stock trading ban as wealth grew, fueling suspicion. Why is it that Congress is not following the rules that so many others follow, and that is you can't day trade? We spoke with Congressman Brian Stile here the other day, and what he said to me was extraordinary. Do we have that soundbite real quick for the Secretary from Congressman Stile? Let's roll it.
There should be no instance where elected officials are making money off of insider information. If you want to trade stocks, there's a place for that. It's called Wall Street. We have an opportunity to prevent members from day trading, profiting off of insider information. But we have to also make sure that we have individuals who have had successful business careers are still able to come to Capitol Hill. It's my view that we need more people with business experience in Washington who are willing to serve this country.
Congressman, do you believe that members of Congress are day trading?
I think there is clear evidence that people are day trading, and I think the appearance of that impropriety is a risk to the integrity of the institution. You can look at the returns and you see massive numbers of trades. We had a United States senator who was the head of the Intelligence Committee who sold their entire portfolio except one stock in the lead up to COVID. And so I think we see this time and again, and it's a reduction of the integrity of the institution, and it is why it is so absolutely essential that we put in place rules of the road that make it clear that elected leaders cannot profit off of insider information, and I'm of the belief that we can pass that legislation.
Oh, my God. Members of Congress are day trading? Honestly, I did not know that.
Well, Maria, I don't know about day trading, but
that's what he said.
But if anyone wants to go to the Treasury X account, my account, we posted a study on congressional trading, and it shows why they outperform. They outperform for two reasons: because they have access to corporate executives, and they have inside information, or two, they have inside information because they know the direction of legislation. And you look at these Pelosi returns, and I'm cuffing it, but since she came in 1987, her husband's returns are something like the 16,000% versus 2,500% for the S&P. You look at Senator Ron Wyden, he makes Nancy Pelosi look like a piker. I think he had 125, 130% returns. All those stocks were bought during COVID. That we at Treasury, we in the administration have very strict rules in terms of what we can own. And it is unbelievable to me. When I had my private fund business, we were not allowed to own individual stocks. You can make a lot of money betting on the United States through indices, We had trading rules.
You could do ETFs, you could do index funds.
Exactly. So this is why, exactly as the congressman said, this is why the American people hold Congress in such low esteem. They believe that it's an insider's game. I believe that it would help the institution. It would refocus and look, people come to Congress and to the Senate, to the House and the Senate to do good for the American people, and it behooves them and their status as great Americans and great patriots to end this now.
Unbelievable. I mean, are you surprised at when you see all of this stuff? You've got insider trading potential. You've got attacks and smears against good people. You've got, this threat to democracy on so many levels. And then they say that President Trump is doing that, and yet they are winning the messaging argument on affordability. How is that possible?
Look, a lot of it is the mainstream media, and that I've repeatedly said on affordability, what we and this administration are not going to do is what the Biden administration did and the mainstream media. They told the American people, you don't know what you're feeling, you don't know how good you have it. They called it the vibe session. And that was Greg Ip at the Wall Street Journal, toxic Paul Krugman at the New York Times, former vice chairman of the Fed, Alan Blinder. You don't understand how good you have it. We know that the price level is high, and President Trump is working every day to bring it down, and we are not going to tell the American people that they don't know what they're feeling. We are going to help solve this real income growth and holding prices down.
Yeah, Secretary, you're doing so much. We so appreciate your time. Let me end with this. You've got some fear on the part of college graduates right now. You've had an incredibly esteemed career from Wall Street to Washington. If you were graduating right now, Secretary, if you're looking ahead to the new year and the new 5-10 years of this revolution of AI, what job would you go into? Would you choose a different sector?
Well, I don't know what job I would go into, Maria, but I can tell you I would be trained up in AI, because the real thing that college kids can do, that if you remember during the internet boom and the aughts, it was college graduates were digital natives. They were facile with devices, with machines, with the internet, like you and I never will be. So what I would do is become an AI native and make the value proposition to any employer. This is how I can help you implement this program. I'm not afraid of AI. I had the CEO of one of the largest credit card companies in, and I said, tell me, seriously, do you think AI is going to hurt your hiring? And he goes, no, we're just going to hire in different areas. With customer service and maintenance, we'll have fewer employees, but in content creation and other areas, AI is going to help us. We'll hire more, and we'll do the better product with highly trained people. So my message would be become an AI native.
Great advice, and thank you for taking that on. Mr. Secretary, thanks for your leadership. Thanks for your time this morning. We've had a great substantive interview this morning, and Merry Christmas to you.
Good. Thanks to you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Good.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent here in studio. Stay with us. We'll be right back.